Hey everybody, so my name is Peter Churchill. I'm here to talk to you about getting up to speed with the Nonprofit Success Pack. You can find me on Twitter, British Boy in DC, and on the Trailblazer community. So today we're going to talk about Nonprofit Success Pack, often referred to as NPSP. So I've known about the Success Pack for many years. I worked in London for like 10 years until 2005. And I moved here to the US to try and do CRM in, I guess, a more meaningful way. And I ended up falling into the Salesforce world and doing CRM for nonprofits here in Washington, DC. So I've been working with and witnessing the history of the Nonprofit Success Pack for the last 15 years. So I'm excited to talk you through where it is today. So what is Nonprofit Success Pack? Well, it's a set of free as in free to own, take some work to set it up, but free and open source managed packages. You'll also probably, if you've been around one, heard of the Nonprofit Starter Pack. This is the same thing. They just rebranded it and hopefully just kept the same letters. So it's open source and it's available to view and copy on GitHub, which is great for getting inspiration, especially if you're a developer. So it's owned and managed by the Salesforce Foundation, salesforce.org, all part of now Salesforce, but still very much owned by the group at the foundation. And if you sign up as a charity, you will typically, from the foundation's website, it'll be installed by default. But it's a set of managed packages like any managed package, so you can install it in any enterprise org or a developer org to test it out. And it's also there for available to lots of other third-party vendors to integrate with, especially with the data model. So we're going to talk through it today. So like I say, NPSP, and sort of as we understand it today, has been around really for 10 years. When I first started out in 2005, it was kind of the Wild West. I mean, there wasn't really any Apex or Visualforce. And then gradually people built templates to help nonprofits use Salesforce more effectively. And then eventually about 10 years ago, the foundation picked it up. People like Kevin Bramer came on board and built what was then Nonprofit Starter Pack 2, which is kind of the first iteration. And then to Nonprofit Starter Pack 3, which was a big change, especially in the way we dealt with households. So we're going to talk about that transition today, and then up to where we are now with all the different features around donation management, engagements, etc. So this is a slide from salesforce.org, just kind of giving an overview of what it does. And we're going to go through a bunch of these pieces today, specifically the household and donors. I mean, the key part of it is like managing all your supporters, your donors, where they're giving money, how they're giving it, who they have relationships with. What money have I raised? I mean, the heart of every nonprofit is understanding that money. And then also then how we engage our donors better to raise the levels, raise the donors, raise the support. And then along with that, the NPSP comes with a bunch of pre-built reports and dashboards. So you can get things like who gave last year but not this year, all those sort of things that a fundraiser would expect. And then of course, it's built on top of the Salesforce platform, so you get all of the collaboration, you get all the customization options, and all the third-party support. So a brief history of sort of nonprofit time. How did NPSP come to exist? Back in sort of 2006, 2007, when I first started really working with nonprofits on this, Salesforce, as part of its 1-1-1 model, has always given licenses to nonprofits. But when they first started seeing it, a lot of nonprofits I dealt with were like, well, wait a minute, where's all the context? They came from other donation systems, so that's kind of what they expected. So they were like, didn't really understand why there was accounts, not contacts, didn't understand where all the roll-up summaries were, didn't understand how to track donor engagement or relationships, which are especially important with sort of bigger donations and foundations, and then also other pieces like managing volunteers. So over time, the purpose of the nonprofit model was to address some of those issues. And sort of first and foremost on all that, as I say, was that whole contact account thing. So Salesforce, they give you the software, but really it's designed for corporate sales. And the corporate sales is about selling to a company and then the contacts at that company. So there's an account and an opportunity. And when nonprofits started trying to use it, they're like, well, really, we want to track donations at contacts. But as all of us know, the opportunity contact role object didn't support triggers, didn't support anything. So had to try and get around that. So the first iteration, and the reason I bring this up is because you'll still see a lot of nonprofits on this if you go to them now, is that they were using what they'll call the one-to-one account model, and you'll still see this. And that was kind of a way to try and actually hide away the account. It was almost like a person account model, but in reverse, where it just showed you the contacts. And really the account, because it was linked directly to Opportunity, was the conduit for the rollups. And then they created this separate custom object called households to group contacts at households and to do all the mailing lists. And that sort of worked, but it was clunky. It created a lot of unnecessary storage because you ended up having all these households created along with all these accounts and contacts, really just to create contacts and households. It was also very confusing if you had groups who wanted to track businesses, foundations, those sort of things, because it was trying to hide away the account object, and then suddenly it was there for some pieces, and if people searched, they would get the account and the contact would come up. And as I say, which, similar to personal accounts, they try to hide away the contact. This was trying to hide away the account, and people found it confusing. So that's very much NPSP 2. But as I say, you'll see this in a lot of organizations still, especially older organizations who installed this. So right now, NPSP 3, sort of the current version of the Success Pack, has moved to what I would call, and they would agree, would be a more logical household model. So now the account, the normal account, is the household, and then you can have a primary contact at that household. And then as contacts get added to the household, we have triggers to set the household name and salutations. So Mr. and Mrs. Churchill, Peter and Nicole Churchill, however that might work. And then they have other custom objects in the org. So they use a custom object called affiliations to link contacts to their employers, or maybe a contact who works with multiple foundations. But this means that you can then manage soft and hard credit. So you can have two people at a household, one can get a hard credit, one can get a soft credit. You can see donations at the household level and at the contact level far more easily. And so as well as that aggregation of roll-up data, it's a much more intuitive data model because you're using the standard account and contact. That custom household model has gone away. Much better support, therefore, for that sort of hybrid household company model. So if you're working with a bunch of companies as well as with households, then kind of you expect to find the data in the household. If you do a search and you get the household, it makes sense. And then it allows other pieces to work. So you'll see there's a custom address object, which means households can have multiple addresses. I'm not sure how in the UK, certainly in the US, some of the wealthier donors, have their summer houses, and they must get all their mailings to their summer houses. So those sort of pieces became very important as well. So right now, if you install NPSP 3, you're going to get the household model. When you create a contact, it's automatically going to create the household. As you'll see, then it does a lot of work behind the scenes to keep all that in sync. So you'll see here's a regular account object with some of the custom layouts from NPSP. So you're seeing that you can do a summary of total gifts from that household, how many people are at the household, and then you can see how that formal greeting and informal greetings being automatically set. I've got two contacts, same last name, so it's creating a unified formal greeting. So if you're producing a mailing, you can just run a list against the account object, and you're going to automatically dedupe against each household and not send two letters to the same members of the household. And as you see, you can then exclude people. So maybe they have another relative living at the household who isn't really considered part of that household. Maybe a child come back from college. Then that would be a way to avoid those from being included in the household, and that's true for all the other roll-ups as well. You'll see we've got all that address management, so you can have the household address, and that then maps down to a custom address object. So it's a very sort of neat and simple way to manage the household and get all the overview you'd expect. And again, you see those greetings are automatically generated, but you can override that. You can have the primary contact of that household, the household phone, etc. So having kind of worked through in NPSP into the household, and I think got to a far more sustainable and logical model, the heart of every non-profit charity is going to be really raising money. If you don't raise money, you're not going to continue for the most part. And donation management NPSP gets more and more comprehensive with every release. So you'll see here we talk about things like soft credits and payments and recurring donations. So as well as the standard donation management that we'll talk about, a lot of these pieces have come in more recently, right? So soft credits, so you can do it automatically. So maybe if someone is affiliated to a certain organization, you can automatically give them a soft credit. It allows you to do things like employer matches. So a contact gives, or their employer matches, the employee can get a soft credit. Or maybe the employer runs a fundraising drive and the contact gets a soft credit. All of these roll-ups can go to the household, but also then to organization levels as well. So you can see when organizations give money as well as through householding. Support for recurring donations, so that's there. Now, I'd say the recurring donations is a little dated. I think that's something that they're working on sort of revamping, but it supports what you'd expect, open-ended and fixed length, so someone could just sign up online, creates a recurring donation, creates an opportunity for each one based on the schedule. So that's great. And then payments as well. So as well as the opportunity, you can do payments, especially if, say, someone's giving a big check, like a £10,000 check, but they're going to split it into 4 payments. You can track each payment and see how much is left to come. And again, with grant management, that becomes very key, where grants may be paid over time. And there's also then allocation of those funds. Often you'll get funds which are restricted. And in the US, often they're restricted kind of by law, where they can only be used for certain things. So you can say, well, this donation, 50% is general allocation, 50% is specifically for this use case. So it allows you to report all that, roll up on all that. So a lot of that, that's kind of, especially on the soft credit piece, there's a lot of that work has been added. It's very, pretty comprehensive, but also quite complex, worth taking some time to work through that. But as I say, like you'd expect, now you have all those donation roll-ups. So those fields that, years ago people expected, this is all kind of taken care of through nightly batches, create a new gift, they're recalculated. And you can see all the fields you'd expect: first gift, last gift, best gift year, total gifts, and then total gifts over in certain time periods. So again, those sort of classic reports of who gave last year but hasn't given this year that need to follow up, who's our big donors, who's our major donors, who's our sustaining donors. You can see all that information, run all the reports you want, segment, and build all that in a way that you'd expect to be able to do that. And, in the last couple of years, we've really seen the roll-up piece get a lot of attention and completely overhauled, to be honest. So it used to be the roll-ups were there, they were quite limited, and they did what they did, but you couldn't really customize them, extend them, or anything. Now, with some amazing new customized roll-up functionality, you get all of these total gifts, but all of the soft credit piece and all the household piece, you can get roll-ups against memberships and all the statistics behind that. But you could also then do user-defined roll-ups. So you can create your own roll-ups and accounts and contacts. So I've had clients who say, well, we want to be able to do a rolling 24-month rather than just year on year. So you can do that. You can say, just give me all the gifts for the last rolling 720 days. You can also customize these roll-ups in a way you didn't used to be able to. So big new pieces, being able to go into the roll-ups and say, I want to exclude a certain record type. So often in-kind gifts is an example where people say they're treated differently. We need to be able to put them in a separate bucket and roll them up differently. Or maybe you've got different tax issues. So maybe like if people give certain fees or certain taxes, different countries, maybe you need to exclude. So you can do all of those pieces, which is really just change the field, I think, on the roll-ups. And you can say both build your own, go to your own roll-up fields, you just add it in and the system takes care of the rest of it for you. It really is, it's pretty great. And as I say, you can add your own custom filtering. They've expanded support, so you can roll up, like we talked about, the payments piece, the general allocation unit piece. You can do the roll-ups on the recurring donations. And you'll see like they're built for scale. There's some amazing webinars about how they managed to do it for like multi-million quantities of donations, and supporting all the different accounts, soft credits, one of the more complicated pieces. So really, I'd say one of the biggest takeaways from sort of NPSP where we are now is just the ability to do all of these roll-ups, these custom roll-ups has transformed that field a bit. So we've talked about householding, we've talked about donation management. Next piece is like data management. So having got all this put together, obviously you've got to get data in both on a first-time basis and then an ongoing basis. And there's two big pieces here that I wanted to highlight. One was the batch import tools. So this is kind of, imagine this is like a big flat spreadsheet type object sitting in Salesforce, and then it has account fields and contact fields, and you could add your own fields, but also donation fields, campaign fields, so other custom object fields, and you can just load it in from any source, be it a spreadsheet or from some integration, and then it will run both the matching logic, so it'll tell you, we think this contact's already in there, or this household is in there, and then it will also then move all the data into the right places. So it will create your contacts, your households, your donations, your recurring, your campaigns, and all those pieces. So it really will make sure everything gets in the right place. They've made some recent enhancements on it where previously it used to be a little bit awkward to do custom fields. The way it was done was kind of with some clunky workarounds in the help text. Anyway, they've finally added in like proper custom metadata support. So it will support all of your custom fields. You can also define some of the matching. You can also do the dry run piece where you can run it and say, well, tell me who you would have matched on. So you can test that your matching logic is right, which is super helpful, because that's honestly when I talk to people about data integrations, hardest piece is kind of getting the matching right and trying to keep the data clean. So that's a big piece. And then on the other side, we've got the batch gift entry. And again, there's been a bunch of work done on this. So basically this is just, you got a bunch of checks, bunch of cash donations, whatever it might be. It's just a way for you to come up with a grid, apply kind of the main funds, the type, the campaign, whatever it might be, and then just quickly enter a bunch of information and have it all entered as donations. And both of these pieces are things where they've been around, they've been enhanced a lot, but they're also if you're coming from other platforms, if you are a charity, you're talking to a charity about helping them, they would expect these to be there because most of these competitor tools have them. And I think these have been very welcome in terms of their both addition and also the updates they've made and the way they work. One of the newer features to be added is something which I think honestly doesn't get enough use. I think people haven't really embraced as much as they could, which is the levels and engagements. So this is really a way that having got the data in there, and you can capture your donors and your donations, which is great, and you can report on them. But I've always said that Salesforce is at its best when you use it to plan your workflow to drive things forward, not just to record it, but actually to make you more effective, not just a bit more efficient. And this is a way to be a lot more effective. So really what the concept of the engagement plan is it's like an action plan. You set up a series of tasks, but you can make them dependent, which is something that's quite hard to do in regular Salesforce. So you can say, I'm going to apply this engagement plan to person X, and then it's going to apply task 1 in 5 days' time, task 2 in 5 days plus X, and down through the system. And the clever thing is it will automatically update those child tasks based on when you complete the parent. So it's going to keep creating that segment for you and updating them. You can just find who gets those tasks assigned to them. So it could be the owner of the plan. If you like, well, a donor hits a certain level, then they should always go to the head of development, or it can just be the person creating it. And a super nice feature is the skip weekends feature. Often, whenever you do action plans, I know this more as when I've done like development work, you want to skip the weekends. You don't want to set someone a task to call someone on a Saturday. And so it'll do that. You can say if you want to go to Friday, if you want to go to Monday. But just all of these pieces, you can suddenly bring them together and start really beginning to drive your growth of donors, of supporters, of advocates, whatever you want to try and do. And then the second piece of that, we talk about the level piece. So with levels, you can say, okay, you can choose a field on an account or content object and say maybe it's the amount of money they've given, or maybe it's the volunteer hours they've put in over time, whatever that might be. You can then say, okay, I've got levels of bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and as they hit a different level, we're going to do an engagement plan to try and bring them up. So maybe the initial level, they give a donation, suddenly they become a silver donor. You want to then reach out to them, first of all, with a call, with a meeting, with an email, and then just gradually try and bring them up that engagement tree to become a more committed supporter. So say just a couple of shots here. So this is the engagement plan you can have. So you say, we talked about the skip weekends and the child due date. And then you can create kind of this tree of tasks on the screen. So this is one of the screens that come with the custom screens. You can do the different status that they get given, how many days after in the dependency do you want it created. So you could say the first one is 5, the next one is 7 plus 5. I want to skip the weekends. And so you'll see here, like I created this one, I think yesterday on the 16th. So it set the first one up to be March 23rd. Well, actually 5 days from the 16th would have been the Saturday. So it pushed it to the Monday. Same with the next one. It would have put it on a weekend, but it pushed it to the Monday. So it's just doing all that for you. And to that reassignment, so if I close call fixed, it's automatically going to move the second one up to be 7 days from today's date. So all of those pieces can really drive that workflow. And that's, it's sort of functionality you'd hope to see in general Salesforce, honestly. And it's great that it's sitting here in NPSP. And I think, again, big use case. A few more things. So volunteers for Salesforce, like we said, that's, along with like the donations, the lifeblood and many nonprofit and charities, they're volunteers, be it sort of manning a warehouse to give out nappies and food to, we're seeing it now, especially with the current virus, where there's lots of need to have people volunteering to help other people out. So Volunteers for Salesforce, you install it. It comes along with NPSP. It's simply installed by default. It's actually a separate package, but you install it. It allows you to give a public page to allow volunteer signups, hosted within the salesforce.com. They have made it compatible with guest site user, my favorite topic. And then volunteers can sign up. They become contacts in your system. They then get like a link. They can go to see a public calendar, their own calendar. But now they can sign up, and they can sign up for jobs. They can manage their rosters. They can track hours given. So it's what it does well. I would say when I've worked with it, the code base is pretty old. It was written by someone who, again, back in the early days of the nonprofit world, and then he actually joined Salesforce, brought all the code with him, and they sort of made it part of the foundation's management. But, it really needs updating. There was talk of a new package, but that kind of got put on the back burner. There was some controversy with it about whether it would be paid or not. And the other one piece that people highlight is the Volunteers for Salesforce requires campaigns. It doesn't work with platform users, doesn't work with communities. So, I think that's why some other solutions you see out there are kind of do different ways, because it does have those limitations. But it does what it does pretty well, and it's certainly get you up and running pretty quickly. I do a lot of work with nonprofits doing like Apex development, and so I love the built-in framework that NPSP provides. It has something you'll hear a lot called the table-driven trigger management, TDTM, which just provides a great framework to allow you to build triggers on top of the platform. So I build a lot of packages for people like who have affiliates who want to use NPSP with their own managed code, and it handles a lot of the complex data updates, provides some lovely error handling tools. So if you're working with developers and they want to extend it, definitely make sure they're using TDTM and getting all the benefits out of that, because the foundation has just done some excellent work making all of these things work a lot better than a typical developer would be able to do on his own. Typical question you get asked at the end is, all right, NPSP sounds great, so what else would I need if I wanted to get started? So if you're new to as a nonprofit, new to it, well, the piece that always people notice is that there is no online payment option with NPSP. But a lot of third-party vendors exist out there. Soapbox, there's Click and Pledge, there's Classy. Many of them also have then UK-specific payment providers that they work with as well. Always worth though, when we're talking about NPSP and third-party, how do they integrate? A lot of them say they do, but especially with the household model, the level of integration could be hit and miss. So it's always worth doing an extra level of due diligence to work that out. I mean, as we know, Salesforce has no email marketing tool built in. I mean, yes, there's part of a marketing cloud, and they work fine with obviously NPSP. It's using standard contacts. But again, just how some of that works is worth noting. And also event management. We talk about the volunteer management, but there is no like event management module, especially if we're talking about paid events and tickets. So, that's often a big part of nonprofits as well. So getting started, well, you can install, like I said, NPSP in any org. Don't install it in your production org, but you can install it in a sandbox. You can install it in a dev org just to try it out. You'll see it installs all the pieces for you. Again, amazing work by the foundation to make it very simple. But you can get started anywhere to give it a go, or to an org that they have. The Power of Us Hub has some amazing content, just fantastic. There's a UK-specific group to look through, but you'll see you get all of that sort of content. There's lots of stuff around comparison tools for different apps, different tools. And then the documentation is fantastic as well. I did the NPSP certification, and just to make sure I was up to speed, that I went through all this. It's just fantastic. A lot of user involvement. A lot of people have also put pieces in it as well. So no Q&A obviously here, but reach out to me on Twitter, British Boy in DC, or on the Success community. Always love to answer questions on this. As I say, Power of Us Hub, lots of people involved, just a great community ready to help out and help you get the most out of it. So thanks for listening. Good luck with it all, and stay safe out there.